Today, we're diving into an often overlooked but crucial topic, managing budgets on product development projects. I'm Jonah Bailey, managing partner of Atomic Object in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and joining me is Mike Marsiglia, our co-CEO. Together, our work experience in technology spans more than 50 years, and we're going to explore the strengths and weaknesses of traditional budgeting model like fixed price and time and materials, and delve into an innovative approach we've developed at Atomic called fixed budget scope control. Whether you're a founder, product manager, director of product, director of engineering, this is a conversation for you. So Mike, let's start with your experience. Atomic Object has been building custom software for almost 25 years. Lots of changes in that time. And your role in the company has also changed a lot over those years. So you've seen sort of everything within building product. How has this long-term experience shaped your views on budget models for product development?
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, thanks for having me, Jonah. So custom software is just hard. It's inherently complex. And because of that, it's really, really difficult to price and budget with some level of predictability. And, I think anyone who's been around custom software knows it's notoriously bad for long budget overruns and projects off the rails. So, what this space has really taught me, especially being in a consultancy where we need to create more predictability for our clients, we really needed to like rev on how we do things. And that's really where fixed budget scope control came from, trying to blend the best of both worlds of fixed price and fixed budget and time and materials.
So for people who might be a little bit newer to the space, tell me about fixed price, fixed scope, and time and materials.
Yeah, these are the two most common ways of doing a contract. So let's start with fixed price, fixed scope. So basically, like let's identify the price up front and all the scope up front, and we'll deliver X scope for X price. And on the surface, this one seems really great. Like from the business's perspective, they're like, hey, we've gotten certainty on this. But like I said before, like software is inherently complex. So this is always like a challenging thing. You, as the vendor, you're finding yourself either like, hey, every time I get a win, I got to take my win. From the client's perspective, you're like, hey, I want to make sure this is managed to that exact cost, which can lead to like weird things from the provider standpoint. Like, are we going to cut quality? Are we going to cut corners? Are we going to do all kinds of things to like make sure we hit that exact price?
As the vendor, I'm incentivized to do a lot of bad things. Like the quicker I build it, the more I cut corners, the faster I get to the finish line, the more money I make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
What about time and materials?
Yeah, time and materials is like almost like the opposite end of the spectrum. So like basically we're gonna bring expertise to the table, and we're not gonna set a budget. We're not gonna set like a high level target that we're going towards. We're just gonna work, and we're gonna get paid for that time. And there's some advantages of this approach, right? Like it's very flexible. Work can be directed in different ways. But for like most of our clients, it's just a non-starter, right? Like I don't know how you go back to your business and you say, hey, I'm doing a capital project. I need a capital allocation of money to do something. I don't know how much it's going to cost. And you know what? It'll be done when it's done, right? Like that simply just doesn't work. It's a little comical to me in many ways. So for us, it's always been like, how do we preserve the flexibility of time and materials, but also create some of the certainty that comes with fixed budget, but creates the flexibility within that to find success.
Yeah, I think the key in there is developing some sort of constraint that delivers accountability to business, but also maintains momentum and motivation within the team.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jonah. In my many years of doing this, I found that the most talented developers and designers do their best work given constraints. So in this world, let's set money or time as the constraint, and then say within that constraint, use your brain, use your skills, and develop the best possible thing you can develop within that constraint.
Totally. And when we're talking about like flexible scope or managing the scope along the way, I think immediately about like the learning and adaptation that comes in within like an agile software development practice. So you're responding to realities from your user base, from the market, from the business in real time. You're changing direction, you're changing scope. I think this is valuable. I see it happen on a lot of our projects, on all of our teams, that we end up doing our best to really set a responsible budget that's going to make sense given us the scope that we know about when we start. But we're always starting at the point of maximum ignorance because we don't know as much about the business, about the market, about the user base as we will just the next day. So varying that scope along the way to give room for learning and adaptation totally makes sense.
Yeah. And maybe it makes sense if I took a step back and just kind of described how this worked at the 10,000 foot level. So, when you're first scoping out your project, you absolutely should put in the work to try and get your arms around like how big is this thing, right? Because what we found with custom software, especially like the worst thing you can do for a project is undercapitalize it. Like if it's going to take at least X to get something, like don't invest less than X because what you're left with is just something that's not sellable or valuable.
Yep.
So what we really want to do is we really want to work hard to say like, what's a responsible budget that we know we can find success within, given the rough scope or direction you're going. Then we require trust between the account or client and the vendor or the software team, right? Because they need to work hand in hand through the process to say, hey, we have this high level budget and we're going to work to get the best possible product done within that budget. And what that means is we're going to break down all of our scope. We're going to estimate all of our scope. We're going to start working on it. We're going to look at how fast we got through that scope. We're going to use yesterday's weather to predict the future, back to your point of maximum ignorance. The cool thing about that is every day is kind of like the maximum ignorance, but like we're a little less ignorant every day. So we're able to like learn from the past to predict the future. And we're going to work together to continually dial in that scope. And what that can mean, that doesn't necessarily mean, hey, we're not going to do this feature or that feature. It most likely means is, hey, this feature is really important. And that means we got to give it lots of love and attention and sparkle for the end client. This feature is important, but maybe it's less important, or maybe there's manual processes that can happen. So like let's make those trade-off decisions so that we can complete the project within the allotted budget.
Yeah. So let's ground this in some reality. Let's say that I'm the VP of engineering of a technology company, and like I've made mistakes on the fixed budget side, right? I told myself the fairy tale that the iron triangle would work and we'd be able to get through it together.
What's the iron triangle, Jonah?
The iron triangle is I'm trying to fix all the different sort of parameters of the project. So I'm trying to fix cost, I'm trying to fix scope, and I'm trying to fix quality all at the same time. And that, unfortunately, like is a fairy tale we tell ourselves. It's never true. One of those always has to break. And it's very typical in a fixed budget, fixed scope project that you're really trying to keep all of those together. But then on the other side, there's like time and materials, and maybe my team, I love my team, but they've got me over a barrel here, right? And we've been working on product X for a year. We haven't launched. They're still working on it. I'm asking like, when is this going to be done? They're like, we don't know. It's done when it's done. How could I leverage fixed budget scope control to sort of get out of those two quagmires?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, you got to like really, if you're that executive, you got to really lean into let's work hard at the outset to make sure that we're correctly capitalizing this effort, that the
Mhm.
investment makes sense for the business, and that we think it's sufficient to get us where we need to go. Then you need to really lean into the data that's coming out of the project, and you need to, change this relationship from like, hey, from I'm gonna either drive my team hard like crazy to get this done, or I'm going to like or my team is going to like just make it happen whenever they feel like making it happen. No, like we're gonna actively together be making decisions throughout the process.
Mhm.
So we're going, it means getting more disciplined. It means getting more disciplined about tracking, where you are through your burn chart. It means getting more disciplined about like recognizing if we're going to miss a deadline, what do we have to do? How do we have to change things to make it work?
Mhm. Yep.
Um, and I think in many ways it moves you from this state of maybe thinking you're in control, but like not really being in control and having that pit in your stomach, to being
Mhm.
like, you know what, I'm in control of the destiny of this project, and I am putting my faith in this team to help me, but I'm along every step of the way, looking at the data, making the trade-off decisions that are necessary to deliver a custom software product.
Yep. So you're doing the work to make sure that whatever product or whatever phase you're financing is properly capitalized.
Mhm.
Then you're paying attention to the data and how the team is performing. You're
Mhm.
making corrections where necessary.
Mhm.
So you're putting some constraint, you're
Mhm.
putting some expectations on the team, but you're
Yes.
also then getting out of the way and trusting the team to be able to work within those constraints and deliver something of value
Mhm.
within the timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm completely trusting, but I have the guardrails in place, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm constantly looking at that data, and we're constantly reevaluating. I'm as much of an active participant as the executive as the team
Hmm.
is.
Right.
And we're in it together. We're a team. We are one team. We are not adversarial forces.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. So, just to wrap this up, like, what advice would you give companies who are looking to engage a software development partner? And keep in mind, like, we're talking about this: how much do things cost, and and what sort of budgeting model am I going to go after, as you're and maybe you're thinking about outsourcing some or part of something. What should I be looking for?
Yeah. So when I think about like vetting someone to build my software, or even my internal team, I'm asking myself questions like, what type of due diligence are they doing to help me figure out how to correctly capitalize the project?
Mm,
So at Atomic, we like to look at this from a couple different angles. We have a huge past history of projects. I like to look at that. How is this similar to something we did before where we have real data? I like to look at, if I was to construct this bottom up, how big do I think each of these features are, and can I add it together, right? And then just from doing it for a long time, like what's my gut feel, right? So for us, we're looking at it from all those different lenses, and I think whoever you're shopping with, like I think what you really want to see is some process and some quantitative way of viewing things, recognizing that like budgeting, especially for custom software, is both an art and a science.
mm,
But like, are you getting the science? And then
yeah.
and then on the artful side, like, do you trust the people? Like, have you seen their
Hmm.
portfolio of work? Have you called their existing clients? All of those things to help like build the trust side. So I think it all plays together.
Yeah. So, just to sort of put a bow on it,
Hmm.
custom software is hard. Lots of people fail. Lots of times people spend a lot of money and get to 80% and don't make it past that and get bogged
Hmm.
down.
Hmm.
And I think what we're trying to do is really sort of like lay out a scenario that has worked for us over and over and over again over
Yeah.
25 years and has led to really successful outcomes for our teams.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It is true. It is hard, but we don't have to make it harder, right? There are things we can do. There are best practices we can have. There are ways of viewing things, and I think so much of it is just like putting in the hard work to like actually do the math, to actually measure where you're at, to actually present that, right? Because I think, you know, you're talking about the people in the 80% scenario, they get 80% of the way done and they never finish. I'd argue they were never at 80%. They just told themselves they were, right? Like if you've been in
Yeah.
that scenario before where like, you know, week 1, we're at 20%, week 2, we're at 40%, 60%, 80%, 80%, 80%,
80%,
80%, right? Like you're
80%
were
forever.
you were
Yeah.
never there. You were
Yeah.
never there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great insight. Thanks, Mike.